In the waning days of World War II, as the Allied forces closed in on Nazi Germany from all sides, something extraordinary was happening deep beneath the Polish countryside. Something so unusual that nearly 80 years later, we're still asking ourselves whether it was real or pure myth. Imagine, if you will, a bell-shaped device, roughly 9 meters in diameter, made from an unknown crystalline metallic compound, humming with an otherworldly frequency in a secret underground facility, while Nazi scientists made notes about electromagnetic anomalies that defied every law of physics they understood. This is the story of Die Glocke, the Nazi bell, a piece of technology so mysterious, so contested, and so wildly speculated about that it has become the stuff of legend, the kind of story that sits uncomfortably at the intersection of history, science, and the human imagination's desperate desire to believe that the most powerful empires harbor secrets that could change everything we know about our world. But to truly understand what Die Glocke might have been, what it could have done, and whether it holds any relevance to our energy-starved future, we must first journey back to a time when Nazi Germany was mobilizing every scientific resource available, when Hitler's regime was sinking vast amounts of money and manpower into experimental weapons and exotic technologies, when the line between visionary science and delusional pseudoscience became dangerously blurred. The Nazi regime, despite its moral bankruptcy and destructive ideology, invested heavily in scientific research, particularly in the latter years of the war when conventional weapons were failing them. They pursued nuclear weapons. They developed jet engines. They experimented with rockets that would eventually inspire both American and Soviet space programs. And, according to some sources, they became obsessed with something far stranger, a device that could manipulate electromagnetic fields, generate impossible energies, or perhaps even warp the fabric of space and time itself. The origins of the Nazi bell story, however, are murky and contested, shrouded in post-war testimony, declassified documents of questionable authenticity, and the kind of rumors that flourish when empires collapse and their secrets scatter like ashes to the wind. Most accounts trace Die Glocke back to an alleged SS research facility called Wunderland, supposedly located in Lower Silesia, near the Polish town of Breslau, in a place called Komplex Rizy, or the Giant Complex, a vast underground network of tunnels and chambers that the Nazis were constructing in the final years of war. This facility was real. We know that much for certain. The remains of Komplex Rizy still exist today, a honeycomb of underground chambers carved into the rock, and historians have long debated what it was truly meant to house. According to the most famous account, coming from an Italian journalist named Igor Witkowski, who published his findings in a book called The Truth about the Wunderwaffe. The Nazi bell was a joint project between the SS and a special weapons development unit, and it allegedly operated from 1943 until the end of the war in 1945. Witkowski claimed that his information came from a Polish officer named Jakob Sporenberg, who had supposedly guarded the facility, and that Die Glocke was designed to tap into some form of exotic energy source, perhaps even gravitational energy itself. The device, as Witkowski described it, was a bell-shaped object roughly 30 feet in diameter, constructed from a mysterious metal alloy that had never been catalogued by science. And it was housed within a protective chamber called a bell-shaped chamber, which was lined with a waxy, mercury-based substance. According to the account, this device would glow with an eerie luminescence when activated, and experiments conducted with it resulted in strange biological effects. Plants withered, test animals died, and at least one scientist was supposedly killed by exposure to the radiation it emitted. The experiments, as the story goes, became increasingly desperate as the war turned against Germany, with Nazi scientists pushing the device to more extreme outputs. Perhaps believing that this mysterious technology could be weaponized, could be used as a superweapon that might turn the tide of war. Whether any of this is true, however, remains a matter of intense historical debate. Skeptics point out that Witkowski's sources are unverifiable, that the accounts contain elements that seem more like science fiction than historical fact, and that no physical evidence of Die Glocke has ever been found. Furthermore, the facility at Complex Riese, while certainly massive and mysterious in its own right, has been extensively studied by archaeologists and historians, and there is no concrete evidence that it housed such a device. Some researchers argue that Die Glocke might be a conflation of several different Nazi weapons programs, that perhaps the stories about it were stitched together from rumors about the Nazi Bell, a different Nazi project involving bell-shaped mines, and various other weapons research. Others suggest that Die Glocke never existed at all, and that the entire story is a modern myth, a conspiracy theory born from post-war anxiety and our collective fascination with hidden Nazi secrets. Yet, the legend persists, and not without reason. The Nazi regime did indeed pursue some of the most exotic scientific research imaginable during the Second World War, and there is documented evidence that they were working on everything from advanced aircraft designs to crude nuclear weapons to ballistic missiles. The SS, in particular, had its own research division, and it was known to fund projects that conventional military scientists considered crackpot schemes. Moreover, there is the matter of what happened to Nazi scientific knowledge after the war. We know that both the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in massive intelligence operations to capture Nazi scientists and their research. Operation Paperclip brought German rocket scientists like Werner von Braun to America, where they became the foundation of the American space program. The Soviets, too, captured German scientists and technology, and while we know a great deal about what was acquired, there are certainly gaps in our understanding of the total picture. Could Die Glocke have been real? Could it be that this device was so strange, so unprecedented, that it defied conventional understanding of how weapons or energy generation systems work? To answer this, we need to examine what the accounts claim the device could do, and whether those claims have any basis in known physics. According to the Witkowski account and other sources that have elaborated on the Die Glocke legend, the device was allegedly powered by something called red mercury, which was supposedly an exotic substance that could generate enormous amounts of energy when properly configured. Red mercury has become a byword in conspiracy circles and pseudoscience communities, often invoked as a miraculous substance that supposedly powers free energy machines and anti-gravity devices. In reality, red mercury is almost certainly a myth, likely born from confusion about red-colored mercury compounds like mercury oxide, or perhaps from cold war-era disinformation efforts by intelligence agencies trying to track radioactive materials. There is no known substance called red mercury that possesses the properties ascribed to it in popular accounts, and the idea that it could be used in an open-to-the-air device without catastrophic radiation emission is scientifically implausible. Similarly, the claims about Die Glocke manipulating gravitational fields or creating some form of temporal distortion have no basis in established physics. We do not know of any mechanism by which a device made from conventional metals, even exotic alloys, could interact with gravity in any meaningful way. The gravitational force is incomprehensibly weak compared to electromagnetic forces, and there is no known way to shield against gravity, or to amplify it using electromagnetic means. If Die Glocke were somehow a real device, and the overwhelming evidence suggests it was not, it would have to rely on some principle of physics that is either unknown to science or an error in interpretation by those who claim to have studied it. This brings us to an important question. If Die Glocke almost certainly did not exist, why does the myth matter? Why do we continue to tell stories about it? And why have filmmakers, novelists, and popular historians become so obsessed with the idea that Nazi Germany possessed some kind of anti-gravity machine or exotic energy source? The answer lies in what Die Glock represents in our collective imagination. It represents the fear that power and secret knowledge are concentrated in invisible hands, that there are technologies and discoveries that have been hidden from the public, that there is a world of covert research happening behind closed doors that could fundamentally alter civilization if it were revealed. It represents our anxieties about technological development running ahead of our moral understanding, about what would happen if a regime as brutal and ambitious as Nazi Germany had possessed truly transformative technologies. And perhaps most importantly, it represents our deep-seated belief that there are solutions to our problems, energy solutions, technological solutions, that have been discovered but suppressed, hidden away in secret vaults and classified archives, waiting to be rediscovered if we only look hard enough. This is the real power of the Die Glock myth, and it is a power that transcends historical accuracy. In our current moment, as we face an energy crisis driven by climate change and the depletion of fossil fuels, there is a powerful human impulse to believe that somewhere, somehow, someone has already figured out how to generate unlimited clean energy. The idea of a Nazi bell that could tap into exotic energy sources or overcome the laws of thermodynamics is not just a historical curiosity. It is a symptom of our contemporary desperation for technological salvation. We want to believe that the answer is out there, that it is real, and that all we need to do is find it or rediscover it. The irony, of course, is that we are actually making tremendous progress in developing real, practical, and sustainable energy solutions. Solar technology has improved dramatically over the past 2 decades, becoming cheaper and more efficient with each passing year. Wind power is increasingly viable, even in areas where it was previously considered impractical. Battery storage technology, particularly lithium-ion batteries, has revolutionized the way we can store and distribute energy. Nuclear fusion, the same process that powers the sun, is moving closer to practical viability, with recent breakthroughs in inertial confinement fusion, suggesting that we may be only years away from net-positive fusion reactions that could provide virtually unlimited clean energy. Hydrogen fuel cells are becoming more practical and affordable, offering a way to store and transport energy without producing greenhouse gas emissions. The technologies we are developing are not relics from a secret Nazi project. They are the product of decades of open, collaborative scientific research involving researchers from dozens of countries and thousands of institutions. They are imperfect, certainly, and there is still much work to be done, but they are real, they are based on sound physics, and they are becoming increasingly viable on a large scale. Yet the Die Glocke myth persists, and it is worth asking ourselves why we are so drawn to hidden, secret solutions when the real solutions are increasingly visible and accessible. Perhaps it is because real solutions require systemic change, require coordination and political will, require us to acknowledge hard truths about our consumption patterns and our relationship with the planet. A secret Nazi machine is much simpler. It just requires us to find it, to unlock its secrets, and suddenly, all our problems are solved. The reality is far more complex and far more difficult, which may be why the myth is so seductive. But let us return to the historical question. What do we actually know about Nazi weapons research in the latter years of the war? And what can we infer about whether Die Glocke might have been real? We know, with certainty, that the Nazis were developing nuclear weapons, though they never successfully constructed a functional weapon. We know they were developing advanced aircraft, including jet fighters and experimental designs that were decades ahead of their time. We know they had a sophisticated rocket program, led by Wernher von Braun, which produced the V-2 rocket, a weapon that would become the foundation for both the American and Soviet space programs. We know they were exploring biological and chemical weapons, conducting horrific experiments on human subjects in concentration camps in the name of science. We know they were working on numerous other weapons and technologies, many of them far-fetched, and many of them ultimately ineffective. What we do not have, however, is any credible evidence that they were working on a device like Die Glock, a machine that could generate exotic energy or manipulate fundamental forces of nature. The accounts that support the Die Glock story rely on second-hand testimony, unverifiable sources, and interpretations of ambiguous documentary evidence. No physical remains of the device have been found, despite the fact that complex Riesa has been extensively excavated and studied. No contemporary documents definitively describe such a project, though there are numerous documents that have been interpreted by enthusiasts as evidence of it. Most importantly, the claimed capabilities of Die Glock exceed what we know to be theoretically possible with the technology available at the time, or even with our current technology. This is not to say that the Nazis were not capable of astonishing scientific achievements. They were, in many areas, but they operated within the constraints of known physics and available materials. And there is no reason to believe they had discovered some fundamental principle that overturned everything science knew about gravity, electromagnetism, or energy generation. Yet the Die Glock legend does illuminate something important about Nazi Germany and about scientific research under authoritarian regimes more broadly. The Nazis were willing to fund speculative research, to pursue ideas that most conventional scientists considered implausible. This was partly motivated by desperation as the war turned against them, but it also reflected a broader willingness to entertain alternative ideas, to reject the scientific consensus when it did not align with Nazi ideology or ambitions. This is not necessarily a virtue. Indeed, in many cases, it led to wasted resources and the pursuit of dead ends. But it also meant that there was sometimes room for creativity and innovation, even if that innovation was often misguided or applied to horrific ends. In the context of energy research, we might ask, what would it take for a device, like the one described in Die Glock accounts, to actually work? If it were to generate energy, it would have to tap into some power source. The possibilities are limited. It could be nuclear, tapping into the energy released by splitting atoms or fusing them. It could be gravitational, somehow converting gravitational potential energy into usable forms. It could be electromagnetic, somehow extracting energy from magnetic fields or electromagnetic radiation. Or it could be based on some entirely unknown principle of physics. Of these options, only nuclear and electromagnetic energy are theoretically plausible with current understanding of physics. Nuclear technology is well understood, and if the Nazis were working on it, we would expect to find evidence. And indeed, we do find evidence of Nazi nuclear research, though it never reached fruition. Electromagnetic energy is also well understood, and while there are many exotic theoretical possibilities involving electromagnetic phenomena, none of them suggest a device like Die Glock could generate unlimited energy. Gravitational energy remains mysterious, and we do not understand how it could be converted to usable forms, if at all. As for completely unknown physics, well, that is the realm of pure speculation and science fiction. The appeal of Die Glock is precisely that it represents this unknown possibility. The idea that there might be something we do not understand, some principle of physics or some exotic material that could unlock unlimited energy. This is not entirely irrational. There are still gaps in our understanding of the universe, and future discoveries could reveal new possibilities, but the burden of evidence is extraordinarily high. And the more extraordinary the claim, the more evidence we require to believe it. No such evidence has been produced for Die Glock. Now, let us consider the question posed in your original prompt. Could Nazi Bell technology power the future? If the Nazi Bell were real, and if it possessed even a fraction of the properties attributed to it in the legends, then yes, it might fundamentally change our energy future. A device that could generate unlimited clean energy, that could do so using materials and methods that were available in 1943 would indeed be revolutionary. But if it is not real, and the evidence strongly suggests it is not, then it cannot power our future. What can power our future is continued research, innovation, and investment in genuinely promising energy technologies. The real path forward involves not hunting for mythical Nazi machines, but building on the scientific work being done today in solar, energy, wind power, nuclear fusion, battery storage, and many other fields. It involves accepting that there are no silver bullets, no secret solutions waiting to be discovered in hidden wartime laboratories. It involves accepting that the future of energy will be built through the hard work of thousands of scientists and engineers, through the careful application of physics and chemistry and materials science, through trial and error, through both spectacular successes and humbling failures. It involves recognizing that the energy technologies of the future will likely not be invented in secret, but will be developed openly, published in peer-reviewed journals, patented and commercialized, and subjected to the scrutiny of the scientific community. This is, in many ways, a less exciting answer than the Die Glock myth. It does not promise sudden salvation or revolutionary breakthroughs, but it is grounded in reality, and it is increasingly showing real progress. The trajectory of renewable energy costs over the past decade should give us hope. The breakthroughs in battery technology should give us confidence. The progress in fusion research should suggest that genuine scientific solutions are within reach. So, while the Nazi bell remains one of the most fascinating legends in the history of World War II, while it will continue to captivate our imaginations and inspire novels and films and conspiracy theories, it should not be our hope or our expectation for the future. Our future will be powered not by secrets buried in wartime bunkers, but by the visible, ongoing work of the scientific enterprise, by innovation and investment, by trial and error and incremental progress. And that future, while less dramatic than the Die Glock myth, is increasingly looking genuinely bright.